I just want to introduce Jyotida a little bit. He's quite a fiery energy. I think Jyotida, I've known him quite a few years now, and he was only ordained last year. But he's this, I see him as this fireball, in the sky. His name means bringer of light, but I think he brings fire, the light of fire. So that's how I experience Jyotida. Full of energy, full of life, full of creative imagination. And I think we'll see a little bit of that tonight with sound and symbolism, the symbol of sound and mantra. Yeah, and I know he's, until recent, he's just changed jobs, but he had a full-time job, and he gives, and he still has, not totally full-time, I think, at the moment, but a job that he has to get into because he's new. But at the same time, he just keeps giving enthusiastically of his time and energy to our Sangha and to our center. I think he's a really wonderful friend to our center and to our Sangha. So, Jyotida, over to you. I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, thank you very much, Kemisiri. Thank you. Thank you for those lovely words. Om Kshitigaba Bodhisattva Ya. Om Kshitigaba Bodhisattva Ya. Om Kshitigaba Bodhisattva Ya. Right, thought I'd kick that off with a sound. So we're going to be talking about a symbol, a sound, and experience. We've not got too long tonight, and I've got a lot to go and try and talk about or even listen to. So we'll just see how we get on. And we'll set my stopwatch as we speak now, just as a reminder. So there we go. It's got a sound on it as well, that'll beep and annoy me later on, I think. So yeah, I want to go and talk how we can bring sound as a symbol, an experience, and the way we can integrate it into our practice. Some ways with sound, as in one part of our lives, probably when we were sort of hunter-gatherers, sounds would have been very, very important. We were probably acutely hearing all the creatures in the world around us. And in some ways now, I think this is just my personal point of view, that we're probably quite heavily sight-based now. We sort of, a lot of times walk around with headphones on trying to block out the world or block out the noise. But we emit and we also receive. And it is a way to go and connect to the heart and perhaps even connect to something even more mysterious than that. And in the early Buddha, the disciples were called Shavaka, which means the hearer. So these disciples, bear in mind, Buddhism was an oral tradition. So the sounds of the Buddha talking, passing on the Dharma, and the disciples listening, and then themselves passing on the Dharma. There was this continuum of sound, reception, then emitting the sound. So what I thought I'd do, hopefully this will work, I've recorded a little 10-minute slot. So in the 10 minutes, what I want us to do is all just sit, relax. If you've got headphones, great, take them on. If not, just try and sit and have a bit of deep listening around 10 minutes. And it's 4 pieces that I've chosen and put together that all represent something to me in the past few years that have had a reaction to my sort of a meeting of sort of my practice in this. So I'd like to then share with you some of that, and we're going to go and tie it in to mantras and more later on. And we'll probably have a bit of a session later on where we're all going to do something. But don't worry, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. We're doing this together. So if you can stay with me a second now, I'm just going to try and share this, okay? Oh, I'm breaking up a little bit, am I, dude? Right, okay. I'm not sure what we can do about that. Is that sounding any better? If I stand it was a bit quieter, is that any good? Can I get some confirmation?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Does that sound okay? And maybe
Yeah.
it's a bit noisy. You know,
Yeah,
what
you
I'm like
maybe the
sometimes.
chat a bit, Dad.
I'm a bit gobby. Okay, this is a problem. Okay, I'll drop the sound down a little bit. Right, so let's give this a try then. Okay, you may have to adjust your volume on this, by the way. I'm not sure how this is going to come out like on your end. Right, hopefully that got me sharing. So let's just see if we can do this. Click that.
Kunjo sum la gyab su che do la penje sangere sho. Kunjo sum la gyab su che do la penje sangere sho. Kunjo sum la gyab su che do la penje sangere sho.
Homage to the Gurus. Amitabha, infinite light. The Dharmakaya, peaceful and wrathful lotus deities. The Sambhogakaya, Padmasambhava, incarnate as the protector of beings. Homage to the Gurus. Homage to the Gurus. Homage to the Gurus. Now the sign of earth is dissolving into water. Water into fire. Fire into air. Air into consciousness. Awakened one. Do not let your thoughts wander. Now the Bardo of the moment before death is dawning. Abandon all grasping, yearning, and attachment. Enter undistracted into clear awareness. Release your consciousness into the space of the unborn mind, leaving this body of flesh and blood. Know it to be a transitory illusion. Now the sign of earth is dissolving into water. Water into fire. Fire into air. Air into consciousness.
Right, so hopefully you got a taste of that. Thank you. All right, okay. So, so in that soundscape that I've done, I'll give you some reflections around that, and hopefully we can sort of pick some stuff out of it. Hopefully you can get a kind of a sense of it, even if you couldn't hear the quality was that great. But the first piece was from Notes on Blindness. It was by a character called John M. Hull, and he came totally blind. And decades steadily his eye deteriorated, and he recorded in that period on tape a diary of his experiences. And in some ways, that clip, if you can get a try, if you hope you try and get a feel of it all, but it was about rain dropping down around him. And, you know, funnily enough, it's absolutely tipping it down at the moment outside, which I think is probably part of the problem as well. But the rain was coming around, and for him, that was almost like a sense of percussion, a sense of the rain dropping down, creating that percussive effect. And for him, it was a way he started to enter into sort of some deep listening. He talked about it, imagining that's raining inside on everything inside, and how suddenly the world becomes bigger for him. He can start to interact with the world using that sound. And sort of when I watched this movie, sort of that sort of deep listening, there's a bit of reflect on me a bit of about the Bahaya Sutta. And this is about a guy who wore all Bach, and he went up to the Buddha, and he was very close. He was very, you know, a lot of people regarded him as a guru. But he went up to the Buddha, and as soon as he saw the Buddha, he realized that, you know, he wasn't there. And the Buddha gave him this teaching, and this real famous teaching. And the teacher says, this is the quote of it: "Then, Bahaya, you should train yourself thus. In the reference to the scene, there will only be the scene. In the reference to the head, there will only be the head. In the reference to the sense, only the sense." And so it goes on from that, but it's the kind of idea is that we can only, that direct listening is something that, as it puts the end of it all, when there is no you there, you are neither here nor yonder, nor between the two. This just is, just this is the end of stress. So it's that dropping down the awareness and just bringing down our absorption into something. So that first feeling for me, that first line of it, when I heard that, that's what it is. It's almost bringing that sense of samadhi to something. The second piece was Bach, and that was Bach's Concerto for 2 violins. And funny enough, this is probably a piece of music that I've heard. It's very famous concerto. It's very, probably heard it a lot through my life. But there's a certain point that I kind of met the music. I was driving along and I heard the music, and I mean, Bach's music can be very conversational. It's very sort of, you can start to interact with it all. But when I heard it, I parked the car and listened to it and really listened to it all. And there was something about the violins that were entwined, being together, and then separating, and then lifting each other up, and this continual rise. I find it deeply beautiful. But also, sort of the time I connected to actually a bit of the practice of being in the Sangha, how we have friends that support us, help us, inspire us, and sometimes we need that lift up, you know, and then we can lift other people up, and it's this continual growth and help. And yeah, really, it's one of the most beautiful pieces of music, and it really puts me in that frame of mind. It's funny because it was sort of Bante's, Bante was quite a devotee of sort of Bach, and in some ways only recent years I've sort of got into classical music, and I certainly don't know much about it, but I've noticed that there has been a sort of response to certain pieces. So yeah, then the next one was Mozart, Requiem. So this is a piece of music that absolutely terrifies me. I remember hearing it a few years back, and there was something about it that really, my hair stood up on the back of my neck. And last year I was fortunate, I was at my old previous job, I was in Germany and in Cologne. And I got to see the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, and they played Requiem, Mozart's Requiem. And it was such a beautiful, wonderful evening. But there's something very mysterious about this piece. It's Mozart's last piece, and it wasn't completed. And there's a wonderful sort of mysterious story around it all. But he seemed to be, this was almost like he was dying, and this Requiem, even though it wasn't for him, it was somebody else, it became his Requiem. And he was sort of worked in sort of a feverish way. And yeah, when you listen to it, it's got something about it. And I remember when I came away from it all, I thought, it's all sung in Latin, so I didn't know what it was. And you can hear the sort of the trumpets, the oboes, and the trombones at the start coming in, a real strong trumpet called. And the whole piece is about surrender and reverence. It's come to that point in his life where everything's dropped away and there's nothing else to revere. And it's reverence to God or Jesus for Mozart, but it was this complete profound reverence for something. And for me, that is, unfortunately, I watched sort of that debate last night in America, and it's really hard to revere things these days. For me, I find it really hard sometimes to revere. I'm so disappointed sometimes, but there is something to revere. There is something to revere the Buddha, the Dharma, the three jewels. So it's something great to go and deeply touch with that. Yeah, and sort of on the words of that piece that I played, if you translate it, it says, a trumpet spreading a wondrous sound through the groves of all lands will drive mankind before the throne. I mean, wow. Bante said that in one of his aphorisms, it said that if you're looking for evidence of rebirth, listen to Mozart's Symphony No. 1. He composed it at the age of 8, so that's something. And the last one was the Song of the Bardo. That's the album, and like I say, I'll put the links on that there. This album really should be listened to as one, because it's just a continual transition between the Bardos and the periods. This is something for me that really drew something out about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I think it's a fantastic piece of literature, Dharma. It's something that when I read it, I just knew it felt right to me. It just sat so right. And there's something about the Bardo is that when we die, our sense of sound is one of the last senses. It's one of the last few senses we have. And when that sound drops, when that sound goes, what else is there? There's this thunderous silence, this thunderous, and what is that mystery behind that? And this Bardo, I find it really evocative of that sort of almost existential part of our lives. So when I hear this and I can sit down and really listen to this music, it puts me in a frame of sort of, I am here to my karma. Everything is going to drop away, and I'll probably the last few senses I'll hear is the sound around me. And then when that drops, what goes on then? Where does it go after that? So it cannot help but when I think of that sort of reflection of the reminder, that really colours how I practice through the day, how I go and view things. So those are kind of the 4 pieces that you hope you got a little taste of, and also I put links in, you can go and hopefully download them yourself or listen to them. But it's almost kind of, and I thank you very much for allowing me to go and do my Desert Island discs. It's something that I find really enjoyable to go and do that. But each of us have our own relationship to sound, and how can we relate to that through the perspective of the Dharma? Where is our connection? It may not be classical. It may not be, and we're going to go into mantras, and it may not be even mantras, but what is our relationship which sort of spurs that sort of inspiration, reverence, or all the wholesome qualities of a practicing and going forth? So this sort of leads on to mantras. So everything that I've just talked about, that's in mantras, but so much more. In fact, I cannot even begin to go and even do and talk about mantras. It's a language and a way into the Dharma. It's personal, individual to each of us. Each syllable and vibration can go very deep and flow around us. You know, and a mantra can protect us when we're in times of deep suffering, and it also can elevate us, take us beyond ourselves to something higher. And it's for us to discover how to work with mantras. I mean, I'll give you a bit of an example. When I was younger and I was at school, I went to do choir class. And I mean, that is basically, when at my school, if you went to do choir class, you was going to go and get the proverbial kicked out of you probably that day. But nevertheless, I went to go and do it all. And I remember going into a room and sort of unleashing my full vocal talent. And the choir master looking at me aghast. And he just basically told me to get out of the room. And that was it. That was the end of my choir career. So right from that point, there was a sense of sort of, you know, I sort of withdrew a little bit. You know, I didn't speak too much. I certainly wasn't going to go and sing. So doing mantras is a fantastic way on even a basic level, start to let that drop, you know, sort of to surrender to something. We can do mantras individually. We can do it as a Sangha. We can do it as a group. We can lead a mantra. But it's a great way to, even on a basic level, to start to tap into that fear of doing something. And with mantras, there's no right or wrong way. We all sort of think we have to do it in a perfect, sing it in a harmonious way. We don't have to. Probably a lot of us can't. But what we actually can go and do is direct something else more deeper about mantras. We can connect it something that goes beyond our self-ego to something far more transcendental. Something that has a beauty, a poetry about it. And that is for us to go and discover. And so I'd like us to go and try and do that now. Like I said, I'm not going to go and single anyone out, so don't worry. But I'd like this next couple of minutes just to, we're all going to be on silent. And I would like us all to try and do a mantra just for 2 minutes. And it can be any sort of mantra. It can be a Buddhist mantra. It can be some intention that you want to go and say. You can do it verbally, or you can do it in your own mind, because this is the wonderful thing about sound. We can actually have sound in our own mind without even creating sound. We can have sound in our dreams and there's no sound there. Whatever which way you want to go and do it. But let's just do this next 2 minutes with a bit of gusto, a bit of connection, and see if we can just engage in something. So I'm just going to put everybody on screen so I can see you all. Zach, if you can make sure everyone's muted. And I haven't got a bell with me, so I can't ring it. So there we go, 2 minutes. Let's go into mantras. Shanti. 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 All right. Well, thank you all for that. And thank you very much for your patience. So yeah, we can go into groups now if we have got time. I know I've ran it a bit late, so if we have got time for some groups, that'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jyotida. Thank you.